All right, guys. Our next guest is a friend of the program and an MMA icon. You can see him as Rutger in the awesome show Kevin Can Wait. Listen to him weekly on Rutten and Ranella. He is a UFC Hall of Famer, a previous heavyweight champion, a king of Pancrase, three-time king of Pancrase, and he joins us on the show today. A friend of the program, El Guapo, the handsome one, Bas Rutten. Welcome back to Submission Radio. This is like your unofficial second home, correct?
It really is. Yes, it's my second home. It is, and I feel great.
Well, it's good to have you back home, Bas. And I mean, thanks for joining us on the show. We know how busy you are. You're right now headed to your school to teach some classes, we believe. And we feel like we don't really get a chance to talk to you much about your teaching life. So tell us, how's your school going and how are the classes going? Because we imagine there's a lot of fun stuff happening at the Rutten MMA school.
It's always. I just came back from Black House. I was training for doing an interview here about Bruc Lee's new movie coming up.
Oh,
and
wow.
Now I'm driving back home to teach my class at 6 o'clock. And yeah, we have a bunch of guys. I think we have now 4 professional fighters, and I would say like 8 amateurs. But the focus is not on the fighters. The focus is more on the general people in our gym. But yes, of course we have fighters as well, and they're doing great.
That's awesome. Talk to us about this Bruce Lee movie. How did you get approached? And there's been a lot of Bruce Lee movies. There's been a lot of documentaries. There's one a few years ago, I remember. What exactly is this one all about?
This is kind of a cool story because I saw the trailer, and what they're doing is a guy is sleeping on Bruce Lee's gym doorstep, and so Bruce Lee tells him that he's going to have to train with him now because he's sleeping at his doorstep. So the guy starts training there, and he starts being intrigued into the whole world of Kung Fu, and he realizes that a Kung Fu master from China is coming over to challenge Bruce Lee. And you really see the spirit of Bruce Lee, the way he's a very cocky guy, very confident, and which is also a legend because he says, "What do you mean? I'm a legend. You see me every day." I said, No. I saw this other guy who was also a legend coming from China, and then this guy challenges him. And that's apparently in his story, it's a big fight because everybody wanted to see that fight, and now we're going to see how it all got together.
That's interesting. It's kind of like a different, fresh, new take. And I like it every time they release something about Bruce Lee because I feel like a lot of the younger people coming up, it's a good way to keep reminding them about who he is and what he's done so the legend and his awesome legacy sticks around. I'm just wondering, Bas, because obviously you've worked and coached with some of the biggest names in the world in MMA, a lot of legends. You've coached a lot of legends. We've seen some of the great work that you've done with a lot of fighters and pride. Now that you sort of do a lot of analyst work and you sit back and you watch a lot of fights, do you ever kind of get an urge when you see someone perform to sort of get in contact with them and help them fill in some gaps that are sort of obvious to you when you watch the TV and give them a few sneaky tips or tricks or going up there and show them a couple of techniques?
I do. I have to say I did because some fighters don't appreciate constructive criticism,
Yeah.
I guess. Because they looked at me, and then the next time when I saw him fight, he was doing exactly the same. But, I tell him, I say, listen, this is what I see, and this is the reason you're probably doing it. And I know I'm right with those reasons because I see it all the time. I say, and this is how you can fix it. Because you're kicking really hard. You're just focusing on the wrong part. Your power is too early in the kick, and you have to transfer it to later in the kick. And I have a great way of explaining that. But, I did it to the last 2 guys I did. They really didn't appreciate it, I think. So it was kind of weird. But then again, I worked with guys when I interview people, and they always after when I'm done interviewing, they say, "Hey, what you doing tonight?" And these are the real guys. These are the champions of nowadays. And these guys do accept constructive criticism because they know that they want it. They're hungry for it. And so then I go, yeah, of course, I would train with them. Now, if they're facing a friend of mine, a guy that I know, I will train them, but I don't do any game planning. I say, okay, this is how you kick harder, this is how you punch harder and faster. I do all that stuff, and then, but I don't game plan. But yeah, I really enjoy doing it, but nowadays I let it come from them instead of me walking up to them and telling them, hey, you can make this better, because yeah, some of them don't appreciate that.
I mean, there's a bunch of funny stories I'm sure waiting to be told there. Who are some of the guys? Who's someone recently that maybe like a big name that you've spoken to and somehow you ended up sharing some tips with them and they were sort of able to take the constructive feedback and criticism?
Well, there's this has been a while ago. I was at Mike Winklejohn at the place at Greg Jackson and Winklejohn, and I interviewed Jon Jones. And he was asking me immediately. He said, "Hey, what are you doing afterwards?
Wow.
Would you like to train me?" And it was fun because I started working with him, and I put the sound effects in his head. You know, I have a way that I teach which makes you faster using sound effects, and it's really weird. But anyway, it works, and he was really happy with it. And a week later, we had Greg Jackson on Inside MMA, and he walks in. I say, "Hey, Greg, what's up?" And he says, "Good, man." I said, "Well, what have you been teaching these crazy guys? Everybody's making these crazy sounds in the gym." I go, "Are they faster?" And he goes, "Yes." I said, "My work is done, dude." I did it. So it worked out perfectly, and apparently Jones transferred it also to the other students. So everybody started working with it.
Wow, that's crazy. And just to sort of give a bit of framing and paint the picture, when was this? Do you remember roughly when? I'd love to sort of know like what sort of timeline there is for this.
This was I would say about 2 years ago. So it's been a while. But
that's not that long. He was already a champion. This isn't like 7 years ago when he was starting.
Oh, yeah.
This is like that. It's pretty recent.
Yeah, it's pretty recent, but that's the guy he is. He's just an extreme athlete who always wants to learn and pick people's brains, and I think it's the smartest thing to do. I did this. I did it all the time. I was the worst, well, I was the best student, so to say, but the worst for some teachers because I was always asking, why are you doing like this? Even in karate, like an upper hand block, like somebody comes down with a knife and you have to make that high block that they all do in karate.
Yeah.
There is a way if you block with your left hand, your right hand has to be crossing in front of the left hand. Wow, that guy went fast. Has to be crossing in front of your hand, and then you have to make the block. So I asked my teacher, I say, "Hey, what is the reason that hand needs to be on the outside?" And he couldn't give me the answer. So then I started, I started digging into it, and I realized, okay, the arm that you're going to block with needs to be protected because otherwise it might be stopped. So that's why the other hand is on the outside. But you see, I was always working little hand movements. Why you turn it like this? Why you pull it all the way high back and not low on your hip? And I asked these questions all the time. I wanted to know everything, every little detail about every technique. But I think that's what every champion should do because that's how you learn.
I absolutely agree with you. And I'm the same way. I'm not a fighter, but even if I do jiu-jitsu or I do boxing or anything like that, I'm always annoying all of my coaches with questions, and all the other people in the class are just staring at you and shaking their head. But that's what you got to do. That's how you learn. And I think all the good trainers appreciate that. Now, Bas, a crazy weekend in MMA has just transpired. A bunch of legends on the card. A lot of stuff happening. And we just want to quickly get your thoughts on some of those fights. The first card I want to quickly bring up with you is Bellator NYC because apart from all the big fights, there was obviously Fedor's return. He was fighting for the first time in Bellator. It was a pretty wild fight where it looked like it was a double knockdown at the beginning, but eventually Matt Mitrione was able to recover and capitalize on a down Fedor. And then obviously it was pretty clear Fedor was out after that and the fight was finished. A lot of fans finding it hard to watch Fedor lose another fight, especially with him taking some more damage to his head. What did you think of the way this fight played out?
It's one of those moments, right? Both simultaneously hit each other, both go down. I already thought before, I think Mitrione, from his 11 wins, he won 10 times by knockout. He's just a really natural puncher, and when he connects, it could be over. So I said before the fight, I didn't expect like this, but I said, you know what? I'm going to go with the wild card here. I'm going to go with Mitrione. I think he's going to stop him. Now, I just gambled that because we're talking about freaking Fedor, of course. But, it's one of those things that happen. And I think youth helped actually was on Mitrione's side. He recovered faster. And right away, he went in for the kill. And I think this is the first time we saw Fedor out, like being out. I mean, his hands went all the way up. It was kind of like Matt Lindland against
Vito
Belfort. When he got knocked out, you saw his whole arms are coming up like the body is still fighting or doing something, but he was gone. So it was a great victory for Mitrione.
It's kind of crazy because, yeah, like it was a double knockdown. It sort of could have gone either way. So in some senses, I mean, Fedor had his chance, but you mentioned a very important thing, and that is that youth. Youth was on his side. You know, he's 40 years old now, Fedor. He's already had a huge legacy, a huge career. When you see him, you know, get this kind of knockout and really be completely out, do you want to keep seeing Fedor fighting at this point, Bas?
Yeah, it's a hard question because if Fedor was behind it, and in his last 5 fights, although against Maldonado, that was not a pretty fight either. They could have stopped that fight way before. You know, if you're out there for the safety of the fighter, well, they should have stopped that fight, but they didn't. And then later on, he still won, so that was a good thing for him. But still, you know, you don't want them to see get hurt. Sorry, I'm cutting in here. That's right. You don't want them to see get hurt, and another good thing. And you know, I think if it would happen again, every time when he goes to America, it's not going well for him. There's something about America with him. It's almost like superstitious here, you know, because you know he cannot seem to pull off a victory here. Yes, he knocked out Brad Rogers and Arlovsky. He did that, but lately in his career, he's been struggling outside the country, his country, and outside Japan.
And I mean, in terms of what's next for him, Sonnen looks like he wants to fight him next. It's an interesting matchup, but a lot of people will say it's probably not the most exciting matchup that you could really create. Are you interested in seeing Fedor fight Chael Sonnen next?
I don't know. I think that Fedor would win that one. I would think. Although Chael surprises me every time. And before this fight, I said, look what he did to Shogun. You know, he got him in a submission. And now this fight, he fought a perfect game plan. I mean, he even threw out a flying knee. You know, it wasn't the smartest thing and fastest thing, but, you know, he got him on the ground, got inside his head, and he just played his game. I think that Fedor is a much better grappler than his opponent was. So I think Fedor will be a harder fight, and Fedor might stop the takedown. And if he can stop the takedown, well, we're still talking about Fedor. This guy has got some power in his hands, and if he can deliver a shot, it could be over for Chael. But, you know, he's been surprising us lately, Chael does. So it's a missed win like that, but he comes off a big victory right now.
It's interesting because for a long time, people like ourselves have been sort of wanting to see Fedor use his sambo again, and that's probably a fight where he'd have to use his sambo, he'd have to use his grappling against Chael Sonnen because he'd be forced into those clinch situations. But you mentioned Sonnen, you mentioned that Wanderlei fight. What did you think of that fight? And, you know, specifically, obviously, Wanderlei, you were there for his prime in Pride when, you know, he had that crazy win streak and he ruled Pride middleweight division. What did you think of the Wanderlei that, you know, we all saw Bellator NYC, which looked quite noticeably very different physically to the one that we saw in his last fight against Brian Stann in UFC in Japan?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not as pretty anymore as it was. You can tell age is catching up. You can see he's slower. The reflexes are not there like they used to be. And I think as a fighter, you know, you don't want to be remembered like that. I think, you know, he was such a powerful fighter. You want to remember him like that, you know. And then if you see him in a fight like this, well, unfortunately, people always say, you know, you're only as good as your last few fights, and because that's going to stick in the minds of the people. And now he's tarnishing what he had before. So, yeah, I would like it better if these guys would simply stop. You know, for me, it was injuries did the trick for me. If I truly believe that if I would not have any injuries, I would have kept fighting as well, because it's a very hard thing to let go. But, you know, once you see yourself back and you see yourself on video, you know you're slower. You know it's not as explosive anymore. And now it can be dangerous against new fighters who are super explosive, who started training when they maybe were 10 years old. You know, it's a scary thing. I would say just stop it and focusing on teaching.
And we don't want to point any fingers or anything like that, but obviously there's some history of PED use and some of the old school fighters, and we know now everybody is clean. But, you know, from what you understand, a fighter that, you know, does sort of use PEDs throughout their career and now sort of fighting at older ages. We know Chael Sonnen, you know, he got in trouble over it in the UFC, but how difficult would it be for their body at their age also without, you know, those PEDs that have helped them, you know, at certain points of their career? How hard would it be for them, you know, to really sort of perform the way that we used to remember them in their prime?
You know, it is very hard. You know, recouping is also injuries. And pretty much every fighter, when they fight, they have an injury. But if you're an older fighter, those injuries will be worse because they simply don't go away. You also have to really schedule the way you're training. In the early days, I could go 4 times a week, completely nuts. 100%, go 100%. And I mean 100%. It's not 99 when I say that. But you cannot do it more than 4 times. And this was when I was 30 years old. You cannot do it more than 4 times because you're going to burn out. Now, if you get older, those 4 sessions are going to be 2 sessions maybe. You really have to make sure that you don't overtrain, because once you overtrain, you can't come back from that. It took me 3 months to come back one time in my fighting career. I had 4% body fat because me, the idiot, thought the more I trained, the better I got. Nobody ever told me that you needed to put good food in yourself and that you actually need rest in order for your muscles to regain their strength and build back and come back stronger. So I just worked out 2 times a day, every day, for like 6 months. And of course, suddenly I just passed out while I was training. Somebody found me in my gym, and I woke up. I go, wow, that is weird. But, I was done for 3 months. I was teaching 3 classes a week. And then for the rest, I was in bed and I was eating. So that's how hard it hit me. So, and if you get older, that's worse. So you really have to watch out.
Wow, 4% body fat. That's insane. Much respect to you, Bas. Now, while we're talking about all these legends, I mean, it was like Legends Weekend. Another legend who fought, obviously, was BJ Penn. He took on Dennis Siver at UFC Oklahoma. Is another fight that was pretty hard for fans, old school fans like us to watch. And, even though BJ looked like, he did have a glimmer of hope after knocking Dennis Siver down, he didn't have that same urgency or that seemingly that passion of being in the octagon that he once used to. He didn't have that killer instinct. It's crazy because Dennis Siver, back in the day when BJ was ruling the division, he would have been a severe underdog. What did you think about BJ's performance in this fight?
I love BJ, always love BJ, but I don't want to see him fight like this. I simply don't. Also, in his last fight, he doesn't look good. He needs to understand that, the days are gone. Like I said before, for me, injuries took care of the problem. Because otherwise I would have probably been in the same boat. I would have tried to keep on going because it's something that's so cool, the working out. I miss it. All the stuff I have to do now. In the early days, I just had to wake up, train really hard, go eat, relax, boom, boom, train another time really hard, sometimes maybe a 3rd session, and that was it. But it was the best life because you had all your friends there with you. Everybody's cracking jokes. We're having a great time. When it's time for training, we train really hard. It's a hard thing to let go. But, unfortunately, when you look at yourself back like that, I would not like to see myself fight like that. If I would see that, I would say, I'm not the guy that I used to be. So it's time to stop.
The crazy thing is that, like, you and BJ were obviously inducted into the Hall of Fame the very same year. That was in 2015. And obviously your career paths have gone very separate ways. But we're seeing these guys like Fedor, these guys like BJ, and they sort of seem like they're struggling a little bit with not really knowing what to do with themselves after their best years. Do you think that's kind of a part of it, where they've done this for so long and, once they're in retirement, a guy like a Fedor, a guy like BJ, they're bored. They don't have anything else to do. It's such a sort of shock to their system. Do you think that's maybe part of it?
Yeah, that could be very well. But like I said, once you get hooked, like the worst thing it's the worst thing, but it's the best thing also. If you fight a very first fight and you knock somebody out, that's it. You're done. You're hooked. That's literally, you cannot let it go anymore because it's a feeling that you cannot pretty much get anywhere else. You can stop somebody with a move that you worked for like the last 10 weeks. Maybe you submit him or you knock him out, but it's a combination that you worked really hard for, and then to see it pay off, and then by way of knockout and the people go nuts, it's an addiction. It's a very hard thing for a fighter to let go. That's why you see a lot of fighters also when they stop fighting. Some guys, like I had an alcohol problem. You start looking for these vices because you can't get it from fighting anymore. You try to get it somewhere else. And alcohol. I got high, I got drunk. You start doing these stupid things. And thankfully, I always see myself on the outside. I always step away from situations. When I'm in a fight with a person, I step away from in my mind, I step away from it and I look at it from a distance and say, who's right here? And then I look, okay, you know what? Actually, he could be right. Maybe I should slow down on this guy, take it easy on the guy, But once you step back and you see yourself train and you see yourself fight, just videotape yourself. I had some fights, I don't want to call name names, who said, okay, I'm going to come back in kickboxing, and then you see them on the Thai pads, and they actually think it's that they did well on the Thai pads, but when you see their workout, you go like, dude, you shouldn't be fighting. This is not you. If I looked at you 10 years ago doing the Thai pads, it's a big difference. I mean, you're 20% slower now, and 20% in this game, well, it can get you killed. It can get you really hurt. So, it's just saying, I got to stop. And if you didn't have a backup plan, yeah, you're going to have a problem. Now, what are you going to do? And by the way, to come back over that super high that you get from a victory, there are other guys out there, like a Pat Miletich, for instance. He does these crazy things. He's 100 kilometers, 100 miles.
Yeah.
He jogs 100 miles, or he chases tornadoes. That's the way he still gets the high. He knew that he had to replace it with something else that is really impressive, in order to not slip into maybe drugs or alcohol, So that he was very smart about that. He just picked something that he really enjoyed doing that will get the heart rate up, and that replaces the fighting.
And it almost feels like the UFC retreat, the majority of the seminars should be about what you do next after your career, but that's just going off topic. Before we talk about the CBD oil, Bas, that's been taken over the MMA world, we want to just quickly touch on one last thing with you, and that is that McGregor-Mayweather fight that is now made official. It didn't look like it was going to happen for a while, but now it's going to be happening on August 26th. So we have to ask you, what was your reaction to the fight actually coming together and being made so soon?
I took it by surprise, because I thought it was never going to happen. I thought it was just, just a thing, I guess, right? I thought it would never happen, but I guess that Mayweather realized, wait a minute, we can make a crap load of money here, And for McGregor already won. If he's going to pocket $60-80 million, I mean, he cannot lose. Even if he loses against the best, pretty much, boxer on the planet. And he steps out of his comfort zone. It's not even mixed martial arts or kickboxing. He fights him at his rules. So there's no losing for McGregor. There's a lot of pressure on Mayweather. He wants to have that 50-0. Every person that he walks, that he sees on the street, or his team, they will all tell him how easy this fight is going to be. And as a fighter, you do not want to hear that, because now you better win. It's almost, and I explained this also in another interview, it's like fighting a girl. You cannot lose, because if you lose to a girl. But if if you win, well, you were supposed to win. You see what I mean? So there's a no-lose situation for McGregor. If he connects with his left hand, because he does have power in his left, he might knock him out. But that chance is very, very slim against the best defensive boxer on the planet.
What are you looking forward to more, Bas? The fight itself, or the pre-fight festivities and the trash talk? Because you know it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, the trash talk, I'm looking forward to that. I want to see how McGregor is going to try to get inside the head of Mayweather. And Mayweather is a great trash talker as well. So I think we're going to see some fireworks. I think a lot of people, I threw a number out there that people thought I was crazy. I think 5.5 million pay-per-view buys are going to be, I believe 4,800 was against Pac-Man. So Pacquiao. So I truly believe that this can actually top it, because of the way they're going to build it. Everybody's going to be tuned in. McGregor is going to be McGregor, like he always is. Mayweather is going to be him. It's going to make for a spectacle. This is American TV. That's what this is.
I mean, you mentioned the pressure that's on Floyd, and how really McGregor has not that much to lose in this fight. And he's already, going to get a huge paycheck. So he's pretty much already won just by this fight coming together. But for everybody listening out there that's trying to figure out, okay, how would McGregor do this? I mean, there's a lot of theories floating around. One, McGregor goes out there, he starts coming forward towards Mayweather, tries to knock him out early. Another theory is McGregor tries to play mind games with Floyd at the start of the fight, save his energy, and try and put him away a little bit later. A lot of people believe Mayweather is going to drag this out a little bit, use a lot of his defensive boxing, and then eventually finish McGregor sort of later on in the fight. How do you see McGregor's path to victory here? In your mind, what is the most likely way he can do it?
Don't attack. Let Mayweather come to him. Mayweather's really good defensive and countering. Let Mayweather come to McGregor. That's what I would do. Once he comes in, it's just what happens with Aldo. We never expected. All those striking skills are phenomenal and unbelievable. I never expected this, but what he did, he got angry because McGregor was making fun of him, and that's why he bull rushed in, and boom, he landed that big punch. Now, hopefully, he can do the same thing with Mayweather, but Mayweather, the guy is just a really good boxer. So I don't even know if he can get inside his head because he's such an athlete, but if he does get inside his head, you saw with Ronda Rousey what happened with Holm. And actually, if you think about it, it happened exactly the same to McGregor and Nate Diaz. Because once they had their first fight, I remember they were at, I believe it was a press conference at the weigh-in, that suddenly McGregor hit Diaz's hand. He lost his cool. And that meant that Diaz got inside his head. And then he lost the fight. And it was fun because when the first time it happened with Holm and Rousey, I had a person standing behind me. We were looking at the way that Rousey was losing her cool. And my buddy goes right away, she's going to lose, dude. We got to put money on Holm. She's going to lose. So then she lost. And then when it happened with Mayweather, with McGregor and Diaz, the same guys behind me said, dude, he's going to lose. McGregor's going to lose. And he did lose. You see, so it's all about the mind games. If you can really get inside the head of your opponent, get him angry, let him come out firing, and because he's angry, he's loading up his punches instead of throwing it just from where they are, then Mayweather could get knocked out. But again, we're talking about a Mayweather, so he's not a really nice human being, but I have to admit that this guy is a phenomenal athlete.
He is. He is. He is. He's one of the best, and it's going to be interesting. I'm personally looking forward to the actual festivities more than the fight, but the whole circus is going to be fun. Bas, we'll let you go in just a moment, but before we do, we have to get an update from you on the Receptra Bas CBD oil. We spoke about it a little bit last time, but CBD oil is really blowing up now. It's becoming the new in thing at the moment. Tell us a little bit about more in terms of updates. Are you using it at the moment, and any interesting stories that have come from it recently?
Yes, I'm using it. I'm going to send it to my mom. She has early stages of Parkinson's now. So, once she started shaking, I'm going to send her as well because it will help with that. It does so much good for, for CTE, for when fighters get hit. I was at the CBD summit, and there was a doctor who never believed in CBD, and he came on stage, and they asked him to test certain strains of CBD, and he goes, it's insane what it's doing. He said, I didn't believe in it, but after the test we saw, like Cooping, if two people got hit really hard, if they would, they gave one person, they gave CBD oil right away, the next day it will be 80% less than the other person. He says 80%. He says that's a big number. It's insane what it does. So you can only imagine, if they keep on going and know when to administrate it, maybe right away after the knockout, not like 2 hours later, but immediately. I think once all these tests are starting to come out, I think people are going to be amazed. And, it's, like I said last time, Israel has been doing this for a long time. That's how I got into it in the first place. I saw this 3-part documentary, like a 2-hour, like 6 hours in total about the CBD, what they were doing in Israel, and claiming that it already cured certain cancers. And like skin cancer. Wow. If you have skin cancer, you rub CBD oil on it, that's it. It will kill the skin cancer. Mauro and I, we had on our podcast a friend from Mauro, stage 4 stomach cancer. His whole family, a lot of people had cancer, passed away. He saw everybody go through chemotherapy, and he said, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to use cannabinoids, and I'm going to use CBD. He did that together with a high alkaline diet, a lot of greens and vegetables, completely cured it without radiation. You see, wow. And without chemo. So I go, man, this is crazy, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think once everything starts coming out, it's been such a bad product. It's the government. The government just said it's a drug. It's not a drug. It's something that helps you. Even the Catholic Church says, no, use the plant. It's there for a reason. You have to use it to help people. So I hope that the stigma is going to be away. We need a lot of education for the people because they hear CBD. They say, oh, it's from a cannabinoid. Just like THC, you get high. They don't even do the research, unfortunately. But once it's going to be in their faces with all the research that they have right now, people are going to be really amazed. I think they're going to cure a lot of diseases with it.
I mean, that's an amazing endorsement right there. And I think the biggest thing that stood out right there is the fact that you mentioned CTE and in terms of people who have concussions. I think a lot of fighters out there can benefit. And I'd be surprised if you haven't already sort of done your due diligence and sort of spoken to a lot of fighters about it already, because obviously you know a lot of them. And if you guys want anyone listening right now who wants to try it out, it is Receptra Bas CBD oil. You can check it out at bascbd.com, bascbd.com. Nice and simple, and you can unlock your morning routine and listen to the amazing Rutten and Ranello podcast while you're taking that as well. And of course, don't forget to follow Bas on Twitter at Bas Rutten MMA. Bas, we've had a lot of fun. We always feel like we can talk to you for hours and hours. There's always a lot of things that we never get to ask you, but I'm sure we'll catch up pretty soon and ask you a lot of those things. We know you got a class to teach in just a moment, so we really appreciate your time, and thank you so much as always.
You're very welcome, guys. I'm always having a great time with you, so my pleasure.